Barack Obama signs a bill allowing lethal aid to be sent to Ukraine and further actions and sanctions against Russia, but holds off on implementing any actual restrictions just yet. Coming up to this hour, New York State bans fracking after an environmental report finds the procedure a serious threat to health as well as to water and air quality. And the mystery of the village caught napping. RT goes to Kazakhstan to investigate a mysterious sleep epidemic that's forcing locals to nod off for no apparent reason. Hello, I'm Kevin Owen. Thanks for being with us. This is RT International and our top story. We start to Washington, first of all, then, where Barack Obama's signed a bill authorizing his administration to roll out further restrictions and to provide lethal aid to Ukraine. However, he stopped short of implementing any new economic punishments just yet. Ghani Chichikan explains.
Expending sanctions against Russia was a congressional initiative, which the president signed, but said he had no intention to impose new sanctions against Russia at the moment. So what this bill gives the president is the authority to impose further sanctions, but it remains up to him whether to do that or not. The White House said signing this legislation does not signal a change in the administration's sanctions policy, which we have carefully calibrated in accordance with developments on the ground and coordinated with our allies and partners. This bill also authorizes the president to send $350 million worth of arms and military equipment to Ukraine. I asked the State Department spokesperson whether the U.S. is going to do this, and she said the U.S. is not currently providing lethal weapons to Ukraine, and that policy has not changed. So President Obama may never actually use the powers that the bill gives him, but the sanctions that the Obama administration had already imposed on Russia are quite extensive. Under those, some of Russia's largest banks and firms are not allowed to borrow money in the West for more than 30 days. They also ban certain exports to Russian defense and energy firms. In a statement this Thursday, President Obama said, quote, "We remain prepared to roll back sanctions should Russia take the necessary steps," end of quote.
Well, let's get some thoughts on this, then go live now to London, and political commentator Alexander Makouris is joining us. Hi there, Alexander. Thanks for your time. So Obama says the White House is not yet ready to actually physically implement any further restrictions, but the door, nonetheless, because of what he signed off, is open. What does that mean for Russia?
Well, I don't think the Obama administration was very keen on these sanctions because it's creating a gap between what the US is now preparing and what the Europeans are doing. There is growing unease within the European Union about sanctions, and that was quite evident at a Council of Europe meeting just recently. So at the moment, I don't think this is an imminent threat against Russia. A bit further down the line, though, if the situation deteriorates in the Ukraine, then I think the pressures on Obama and on the US administration to use some of these extra powers may grow. But I don't think it's a danger at the moment.
Seems a bit of a change, though. Only a week ago, Obama said, didn't he, that simply piling on the restrictions would not bring about the desired result. In fact, let's remind ourselves of his very words.
The notion that we can simply ratchet up sanctions further and further and further, and then ultimately Putin changes his mind, I think is a miscalculation. What will ultimately lead to Russia making a strategic decision is if they recognize that Europe is standing with us and will be in it for the long haul, and we are in fact patient.
All right, so the implicit threat is still there. Now, I guess he's saying it's over to Russia to do something again.
I mean, in a sense, what he said there is interesting because, of course, it goes against his own policy. Because when I say his policy, the US policy, which basically is to ratchet up sanctions, and they've been doing that all year. And he's basically saying, well, you know, if we ratchet up sanctions, it's not going to change Russian policy. And a lot of people are saying this, which begs the question of what the sense of having sanctions is at all. There is diminishing enthusiasm in Europe for this course, and I think the Obama administration and President Obama himself are intelligent enough to understand that. And I think they also realise that unless there's a major change of situation in the Ukraine, which is possible, they're going to have a major struggle keeping the existing sanctions in Europe in place beyond March, when they have to be renewed. So rather than pushing for more sanctions at the moment, the bigger problem, if they're going to continue with this sanctions policy, is to hold the line on them.
One thing, nonetheless, we're heading into a new year, wondering what will turn out in Ukraine. Will the situation get any better through 2015? This bill also permits, doesn't it, setting up to $350 million worth of lethal aid to Ukraine. Just for our viewers, what are we talking about when we say lethal aid there?
Well, I mean, lethal aid means weapons, and I think that's what other people in the Congress have in mind. I mean, the United States is already providing a certain amount of aid to the Ukraine in terms of logistical support and whatever, but this would actually mean hardware. That's how I understand it.
And if that happens, what would the outcome be?
I think it would increase the escalation. I mean, there's already a very powerful war party in the Ukraine. And if they start getting weapons and the promise of American support, which comes with that, it will be almost impossible to hold the line and keep the ceasefire going, which is there at the moment. Now, if that happens and if there is a renewal of the war, then frankly all bets are off. We would probably see a major escalation in East-West tensions. I don't think the Europeans want it. I don't think Obama himself wants it, which is why, at the moment, he's not keen to do it.
All right, Alexander Mercouris, thanks for your thoughts. Political commentator from London there.
Thank you.
Amid the sanctions controversy, the ruble's shown slight growth Friday. We can report the Russian national currency has been gaining ground following that dramatic volatility that started earlier in the week. Igor Peskanov's been following its journey.
Well, it seems that right now the ruble has stabilized. Perhaps we're seeing a positive trend, which began on Thursday when the Russian national currency regained some ground against the euro and the dollar. You can check out this chart that we've prepared for you. You can see that the fluctuations of its value were a bit higher, meaning it lost more and it gained more on the same day. But still, its average value was about the same level as it is now. Now, Russian markets are growing as well, and this is despite the falling oil prices. And some analysts are saying that these are the results of the latest authorities' measures to strengthen the ruble beginning to kick in now. The finance ministry is now forecasting the further growth of the ruble in January and later on Friday. The president is expected to meet with the heads of Russia's biggest businesses. That meeting is going to be held behind closed doors, but it's very likely that it's the economy that they're going to be discussing. Of course, we'll be waiting for any details that could come out of that meeting, and we'll bring them to you as soon as possible.
We will indeed. We're across the trends in Russia's economy as tumbling oil prices and Western sanctions continue to take their toll and make their mark. RT discussed the new road too between Washington and Moscow with a former Soviet leader who helped end the Cold War those years back. Mikhail Gorbachev told Sophie Shevardnadze why he thinks America needs a perestroika of its own.
Whenever tensions are high, whenever there's instability in a certain country or throughout the region, it's an opportunity for them to intervene. That's my frank answer to your question. I'm quite familiar with this policy from my own experience. This is bad for the United States itself in the first place. In my lectures, I ask the following question: do you really think you'll be happy with the role of the world's policeman? And I say, I'm pretty sure that you won't. And the audience applauds. And in all of my public appearances, I ask these questions, probing public opinion. No, the Americans do not want war, but it's not easy for them. With society that they have, it has developed certain powerful mechanisms. I say they need a perestroika, I mean it. They can call it any name they want, the American way.
And that programme's airing throughout the day. And if you want to catch it any time, you can online on our site, rt.com, streaming right now. Environmental activists in New York are celebrating the state's decision to ban shale gas drilling, a move that's seriously disgruntled energy executives, though. However, Governor Andrew Cuomo got a round of applause from grateful activists outside his office when he made the announcement. New York has banned fracking in the wake of a report on the associated health risks. It's the second US state to do so after Vermont. Marina Portmaya has the details.
A 6-year campaign led by environmentalists and anti-fracking activists proved victorious this week. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that hydraulic fracturing will be banned in the Empire State due to mounting health concerns. The decision came after a long-awaited study by the New York Health Department found significant public health risks associated with fracking, including water and soil contamination as well as air pollution. Even New York's acting health commissioner admitted he wouldn't want his own family to live in a community where fracking is taking place. In recent years, as the New York governor traveled around the state, he was shadowed by protesters who showed up at his events demanding that he impose a statewide fracking ban. Governor Cuomo also faced pro-fracking pressure within his own administration. In October, staff members were accused of editing a federal study on fracking in order to play down the health risks. Activists say Cuomo has demonstrated courage and national leadership by not caving to political and corporate pressure.
New York is serving as a beacon, a shining light and example to other states and activists in other states that they can stand up to industry. And when people tell them to, sit down, shut up, and just get with the program, and that it's inevitable, they're going to lose, the special interests will prevail, that's no longer the case.
Fracking is a process in which water and chemicals are injected into shale to free oil and gas. It's currently allowed in at least 32 states, with the biggest booms in Texas and Pennsylvania. Earlier this year, I visited fracking sites in Pennsylvania where citizens are continuously protesting the environmental dangers and pollution they say their community has suffered. While local communities across the country continue mobilizing to stop fracking, New York is now leading by example. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
However, in Britain, where fracking is still flourishing, iconic fashion designer Vivienne Westwood went to Downing Street to present the Prime Minister with an unusual Christmas gift, a box of asbestos. I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted that. She wanted to warn David Cameron that fracking could be the UK's next disaster as she sees it. Her present obviously never made it into number 10, but the fashion designer did manage to deliver an open letter from 150 high-profile supporters of the anti-fracking campaign. Indeed, among those putting their signatures to the letter are Beatles legend Sir Paul McCartney, also Hollywood star Jude Law, comedian and activist Russell Brand, and the artist Yoko Ono. Hundreds of farmers and trade union members have descended on the European headquarters following the EU's annual summit. They're protesting over Europe's plans to set up a free trade zone with the US. They fear it'll weaken environmental standards and hit small businesses while profiting big corporations. Another key message is no to austerity, aimed particularly at the German Chancellor. But she and other EU leaders managed to avoid the protests by finishing their summit a day early. Let's talk about all this. I'm very pleased to say now I'm joined by a member of the European Parliament, Marisa Matias, to discuss the anger on the streets of Brussels. When you talk about Brussels, you often don't think anger on the streets, but that's what's been happening. Hi there, thanks for being with us. Anti-austerity protests have been seen in the past in the south, but now they're in the very heart of where Europe's decisions are made. But are those protests heard, is the question, I guess.
Yeah, that's the big question. I think that's €1 million question, which is the fact that we are seeing that the protests started in the south, but now they are in the very core of the European Union. And just last week we saw a general strike in Italy, we saw a general strike here in Belgium, and today again protests against the European summit. And at the end, the leaders of the European governments don't want to listen to the protesters. So it's a new way of democratic relationship, which is to avoid to listen to those who have criticisms to do.
I mean, Belgian farmers particularly and entrepreneurs are extremely worried about this proposed EU-US trade deal that's currently in the works. Indeed, the European Commission President said that he thinks talks with Washington are going to be wrapped up by the end of next year. It's an ambitious schedule then. But what's the worry here? Surely it's a good thing to have trade with the US and vice versa, or not?
The problem is not to have trade or not to have trade. The problem, I think, is the way this has been dealt with, and mainly the very own trade agreement. We are talking about something which, in fact, if it would be good for everyone, if it wouldn't raise any kind of problem, so why to make it so secret? Why not to let it to be discussed with everyone, with all the parties involved and interests? And in fact, this agreement and the negotiations with this very ambitious schedule, as you said, are being dealt in such a secret room. Not even the members of the European Parliament, like myself, have access to the documents. We are only having access to some kind of agenda of the meetings, but there are some leaks about the content, and we know that there are dangers, in fact, for agriculture, for environment, in terms of what are the patterns across Europe, and also in terms of job losses. I know that what is said is that it will be a boost for the global economy, but we all know there's no such a thing like everyone gaining. So there will be losses, and the losses are, as usual, for the parts which are not in the power, or at least controlling the power, as we see. So I think that big corporations are very interested that this is not discussed with anyone, including the farmers, but for the small and medium enterprises, for the organizations, the NGOs, for citizens, it would be crucial that we could have access to the content and discuss it, and then say if we are in favor or against it. But that's something that the government seems to not allow citizens to do, as well as the European Commission. The main aim is to try to finish as soon as possible, no matter is not democratic way of procedure, no matter.
Well, who's
that
pushing
there are
this
concerns.
then? Who's pushing it, do you think? Who's pushing it through this quickly?
Honestly, I think that who is pushing is also who is pushing the governments in the European Union, and not only in the European Union, but in the major part of the world. Big corporations are ruling, and we need to rescue democracy. We need to rescue policy to the citizens' domain. That's our main task, I think, because in the name of the interests of a few big corporations, we are removing from the majority of the population the rights that they should have, not only to participate, but also to a fair economy, to a distribution economy, and not this kind of concentration that we have seen over the last years, and it seems that someone is interested in continuing like that.
Well, we'll be following up the story. Thank you for your input. Nice to talk to you today. Marissa Matthews, European MEP, on the line there.
Thank you very much.
Coming up here, visa disputes erupted between the EU and the UK. The European Union's top court says Britain should allow non-EU family members of the bloc citizens to be able to travel to the country without a visa. We explain then why the UK is angry about that ruling. Plus, too, Islamic State revives an ancient terror tactic, scorpion bombs that are meant to spread panic among civilians, and indeed they do.
Which way Turkey? Ankara is a member of NATO, while at the same time getting closer to Russia. Turkey will probably never be part of the EU, but its foreign policy influence is said to grow in the volatile Middle East. Turkey has options, but what about friends?
Turn off your TVs. This is RT, and we're a propaganda bullhorn.
Propaganda bullhorn? That is the state-sponsored Russia Today program.
Just words, but that should be enough, right?
I don't think I'm going to analyze this further.
That is just ridiculous.
Non-answer to my question.
Oh, Johnny's not happy. Our reporters risk their safety and sometimes their lives all over the world to bring people stories non-propaganda channels don't want you to see. And we cover both sides.
I'm Abby Martin. The stories we cover here, you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Another big story that mainstream headlines seem to have
There's a
missed.
reason they don't want you to know.
Nothing in the report detailing the reason.
We should all be completely outraged. Now let's break the set.
(20 in the evening here in Moscow now. In another blow to relations between the UK and the EU, British visa regulations have been ruled illegal by the European Union Supreme Court. The ruling concerns entry visas for non-EU family members of the bloc's citizens. Laura Smith's got the story from London.
David Cameron essentially wants to let fewer people into Britain, and this is yet another ruling from the European Union which suggests that he should let more people into Britain. This case specifically refers to a Colombian woman who lives in Spain with her English husband, who was having, every time she wanted to come to this country, to apply for a visa to travel with her husband and 2 daughters. The European Union now says that she shouldn't have to do that anymore. Now, this is a fresh slap on the wrist from the EU for David Cameron, who spent a lot of time recently talking about how to restrict migration from EU nationals, let alone non-EU residents. But basically, every time he tries to do this, Brussels says that it's against the rules. So a couple of recent things that have happened. Firstly, at the end of November, he announced that he was going to restrict benefits for EU migrants. At the moment, an EU migrant has to be in this country for 3 months before they can claim any kind of benefits. But David Cameron wants to put that up to 4 years. The EU says that's not allowed. There was also a big row over a bill for £1.7 billion, you may remember, that Brussels issued after renegotiating Britain's contribution. David Cameron said there was absolutely no way he was going to pay that. So really, we're seeing a number of rows surfaced between Cameron and the EU. He's promised to renegotiate membership in preparation for a referendum should he get elected, but his opponents, UKIP specifically, now say that the promise on migration is either naive or dishonest.
Islamic State fighters are said to have unleashed an ancient but nonetheless terrifying weapon straight from our nightmares to wreak havoc on innocent civilians. They've been launching scorpion bombs. Canisters with hundreds of the live poisonous creatures have reportedly been fired into towns and villages in Iraq. This horror movie style tactic doesn't cause mass death, of course, but the panic and psychological impact is immense. We discussed the scorpion bombs with the former head of chemical and biological weapons for NATO in the British Army, Hamish de Breton-Gordon.
Purely a way of spreading fear. I was in Iraq last week running seminars for the Iraqi security forces and the Ministry of the Interior on how to counter the chemical and biological threats coming out of the so-called Islamic State. And one of them, which they're dealing with at the moment, is the scorpion issue, where they appear to be putting thousands of scorpions into small canisters and then firing them by rockets into villages to terrify them. And what the Islamic State are doing is telling people that they're doing it. There is this irrational fear that scorpions are then going to create casualties.
A lot of stories lined up online. You might want to check out RT.com. A couple in particular we've picked out for you. A bankrupt Spanish businessman's driven his car carrying gas cylinders into the ruling party's headquarters. Why? Well, that's the way he took revenge against the government, which he blames for all his misfortunes. Head to RT.com to learn what came of that attack and what happened to him. Also, there are 2 stunning images of 2 galaxies colliding. Scientists spent 5 times more observation time than usual to create this. Look, a kaleidoscopic composite image. Very clever, very detailed too. Take a look online if you want to see more of that. Next, a mysterious epidemic to tell you about that's hit a small village in Kazakhstan. Locals there are suddenly falling asleep, and then when they wake up, they feel drowsy for days on end.
Калачи охватила настоящая сонная эпидемия, но причины странного заболевания до сих пор не озвучены. Жители разных возрастов падают в обморок, после чего засыпают на несколько дней.
Бывает, что люди спят и неделю может человек спать. Он не может, ребенок, он стоит, он падает, он не может стоять. Один сидит, улиток с себя снимает, галлюцинации идут. Другой орет, у меня сейчас голова взорвется.
Меня вроде как бы вот сюда вот тянет так в речку. Хочет свалить, как бы вроде нечистая сила.
Казалось, как кто-то меня тащит, лошади крылатые.
So what's the cause? Well, several attempts have been made to solve what's become known as the Sleepy Hollow riddle. One theory is that it may have something to do with nearby abandoned uranium mines. So our team visited an area just a few kilometres away from that affected village to measure the radiation level there. But the miners who worked there aren't so sure. They say they were never affected by any sleep syndrome while they worked there in the past. You can find out more about the whole mystery of Sleepy Hollow in a special investigation we put together. You can watch it online now, or it'll be airing here next week. Tonight is the night when Brits hit the pubs and clubs for pre-Christmas celebrations on the last Friday before the big holiday. And as partygoers knock back the drinks, the emergency services are bracing themselves yet again for one of the busiest nights of the year. Anastasia Churkina reports on festivities that sometimes tend to go just a bit too far.
It's the last Friday before Christmas. This is when, in the UK, holiday party time goes into overdrive. And drinking is taken to the extreme.
Okay, I should probably say it's not the right thing to do, but I'm going to probably be doing that tonight, so I'm probably guilty of that.
As alcohol consumption skyrockets, all reason leaves the building.
This man is on TV and his mother-in-law for no reason whatsoever.
You get people falling down the stairs, you get people hitting on people they probably normally wouldn't hit on.
Sponsored by the London Ambulance Service, anti-binging campaigns calling for moderation have popped up all over the British capital. Anti-drinking campaign groups say last December alone, over 6,000 Londoners needed assistance due to alcohol-related incidents. And this year, predictions are no different. The day that's been dubbed Black Friday, Fallover Friday, and even Black Eye Friday is said to be the most alcohol-fueled of the year, putting huge pressure on ambulance services paid for by the taxpayer.
They shouldn't really inflict that on the taxpayer and whoever's working in the hospital and so on, especially when you hear that some people are drunk and they attack people.
Researchers say in Britain the number of alcohol-related hospital admissions has almost doubled within a decade. Plenty of organizations like Drinkwise work to minimize harm caused by alcohol. The merry-go-round of over-eager partying spins on for now, leaving many in doubt that the tradition of binge drinking to the excess will ever die down.
It's the same in, year out. It won't change.
Anastasia Churkina, RT, London.
This is RT International. Thanks for being with us. The next live update is just about 32 minutes from now with me, Kevin Owen. After the break here, crosstalks lined up. Peter's here. Talking about Turkey's efforts to keep its NATO allies happy while at the same time enjoying booming economic ties with Russia.